I'm Sharon Strauss from Haverford College, and I am going to give you a presentation on lessons learned almost a decade with Panopto lecture capture. So Haverford has been using Panopto since 2011. We did a pilot that year. We did a full implementation back in 2012. Things went more or less okay, but we did have a lot of problems with errors and whatnot, so we did a review in 2018. And after surveying other schools and looking at other options, we did decide to stay with Panopto and renewed last year in 2019. So just to look back, this is Panopto in 2015. There's not as many recorder options. You can see right here, there's just a small recorder. The screen image is a lot fuzzier, so we've come a long way. So what are we using Panopto for? A bunch of different things. We're using it a lot for in-class lectures, in-class and out-of-class student presentations or music performances. That's been really nice for those because students can review them and you can review them and you can kind of look together at what the student work is. Use it a lot for guest speakers, search candidate presentations, and especially since we've gone to the quarantine, flipped content, but even before then we were using it for some flipped content. So what are our findings? Basically, it works great unless it doesn't. And we're going to see some examples of Panopto presentations for those who aren't familiar with it. I am recording with Panopto right now, although as part of the showcase for T3, it's on YouTube. So when it doesn't go well, tech support has been really great. So I encourage you, if you are using Panopto, to reach out to tech support if you do have any sort of problems. And I'm going to talk about some of the issues that we ran into, but there are like a huge variety of different things that come up. Everything is different, and I really encourage you to work with tech support. They're great. So the first lesson is somewhat obvious. Settings matter. If you don't record the right thing, you don't get the right output. So the most important thing is to make sure that you're recording what you want to record. That would be in this section over here. If you want to have a picture of yourself or a picture of the blackboard or any sort of picture, you can have a variety of different video inputs. The first one is here. That's typically a camera pointing at yourself, but it can be a blackboard. You also have a couple of additional video inputs you can do here, and you can select the source. The next option is you want to make sure that you have the right recorder set. I'm using the Snowball. I'll talk about that a little bit later again, but you can use different ones. You can capture the computer audio if that's going to be important for your presentation. And if you're using a PowerPoint or a Keynote, you'll want to check this. I'm actually using a PowerPoint right now, so I did check it in this version. So let's erase that. And so another problem is bad audio. So the audio might be missing altogether. That is a particularly common problem in rooms that have a lavalier mic, where the mic needs to be turned on. But it can be a problem anywhere. You want to have your audio levels as you talk a little bit, like basically in this zone. If you get them too much at the low end, people can't hear, and too much at the high end, it will show up as red. Then you start to get like a scratchy sound. Another issue can be occasionally, especially we tie it to LMS, So people sometimes have the wrong course folder. By default, you're supposed to go into the right course folder, assuming you're starting from within your course. There are occasionally bugs that have happened to make that the wrong course folder, or sometimes people are not starting from within their course. So if you do make this mistake, you can fix it, but it's better not to make it. Another issue is the unwanted name of the recorder. Again, you can change this, but for instance, we were doing search candidates and people put the names of the candidates in there, and then we realized that that meant that like the candidates would see who the other search people were when we started the recording. So it's that is an issue that you just want to be attentive to. Make sure that you're using the recording name that you want. Again, you can change that later. The parts that you cannot change later are these parts down here. If you record too much, you can get rid of it, but if you record too little, you can't add it. But even like if we record too much, people don't like to edit their recordings, even though we'll talk a little bit later about doing so. So again, as I mentioned, equipment is great. The built-in microphone for your computers are probably pretty good, but I am using a Snowball for this, which does have a little bit better quality. I just mentioned you want to check your audio levels, make sure your camera is pointing at what you want. In our classrooms, we have a system that adjusts the camera from the lecture podium, and then you have to kind of look. We have some presets, but you need to pick the right preset. And you can do adjustments, but you have to look. So that is a fairly common problem, is to point the camera at the wrong place, or not turn the equipment on at all and not have any audio or video. So one thing that you do want to do is test. Let's go back to the testing, and I'm going to show you just a quick example of the type of testing that we do. So here I am testing one of our classrooms. I'm just going to show at double speed and go through it. I have my...
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Are we on? Can you hear me? Here we are.
All right, so let's get rid of my sound, but you can see the sound is there. And then we don't have to watch this whole thing, but you can see I'm kind of testing where you see on the whiteboard, and can you see what's written on the whiteboard, because sometimes the whiteboard can be fuzzy. I'm trying to see where the camera sets are, because someone was concerned that they were getting the right part of that. So you can test, and I made some marks at the edges of what you see. You can move around from one spot to another. So over here you can see, can you see what I'm writing over here? Yes, you can. And this is the camera pointing at the whiteboard right. Now I'm moving it, and then I'll write again. Where is it? Room front, etc., etc. You can just see, you can do different settings on your desktop, and just this is using a slide. If people just want to write on like a whiteboard, this is a interactive pen display in this case. So it's enough of that testing. Let's close this up and go back to our presentation. You can have different types of inputs. You can have a document camera if you want to look at a book or look at handwriting. That's another option as opposed to like an interactive pen display or scanning. You can really point at any object. That can be especially important if you are, like, again, recording in this sort of odd situation where you can't just hold up items that you might hold up in the classroom, and you want to share them, although you can get a lot of those things on your regular camera. Another thing that we've done a lot is use Air Server. That will capture iPad, iPhone. Again, another way to do writing as well as get other things, what that looks like is you'll have an air server window on your screen. You can of course expand it. In this case, it's not expanded. This is my iPhone. Each of the classrooms in this case have a name that tells you the classroom, and then you pick the name of the classroom that you want for mirroring. So another thing is you can do remote recording, which means that you can say, I want to record Classroom X every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. There are some pros and cons to that. We were originally using Macintoshes in all our classrooms. We switched in 2019 to make some of the classrooms Windows only. And those are the classrooms that we most commonly recorded in because they were the classrooms with the interactive pen equipment and a lot of the rooms set up with cameras, microphones, that sort of thing. And we found, it worked great for some people because they didn't have to start and end the recorder. It would just know to start at 10 a.m., finish at 11:30, and they didn't have to do anything. There were some problems. A common one is that the classroom computer needs to be on, even if the instructor is just using the camera and not recording the computer. It makes sense, but it's not entirely obvious. And this is another thing that makes sense, but is harder to remember when you're not doing the recording yourself, is if you're using a camera, you need to check it to be in the right position. So even though you don't have to worry about starting and stopping the recorder, you do have to worry about making sure that your audio-visual is getting the right content. So lesson 4. For those who want to record anywhere, they need to download the recorder to their own computers, and doing so is not really obvious. So we wrote up these instructions, but just to show you, since our recorder is tied to our learning management system, Moodle, you first had to put the link in your Moodle course, then you had to open the link, then you click on this Create button, which is not totally obvious that you need to do that to download the recorder. But then you do get the recorder, so people would keep looking for it in the wrong place and it wouldn't work, because in order to get the wrong recorder, you actually need to have, at our situation, the link in your Moodle course. Okay. So another thing that we found is that the settings option is really powerful. So I'm going to look at, say, some of the settings. So this is a recording. I'm just going to keep using this for examples. This is one recording I made. We'll look at a few things about it. The first thing is the settings. Again, I mentioned the folder is important. So if I want, it's in sample course 1 now, if I wanted to change to another course, say Chem, we have a bunch of chemistry. Say Chem 22, it will come up with Chem 22. There's all these different years, and I can just select any of these folders, but I'm happy with sample course, so I'm going to cancel. I can change the name here. Again, I'm happy with that name. You can change all sorts of things about how it's downloaded, who you're sharing this with, which content you're downloading, so you can download in different ways, different types of downloads here. I'm going to do one of these for our carousel presentation. I'm not going to talk about quizzing, but you can add quizzing. Over here you can get rid of streams if you don't want any of them. Again, people pick too many streams. If they do, you can just exit right here. these different options here. You can do captioning, upload captions, although we'll look at auto captioning later. Manage, there's these different options. We have sometimes used this reprocess if the processing didn't work and the video wasn't working that well, but usually you have to call Panopto for that. And this log is actually sometimes useful. So those settings are your friend. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Oh, yeah, if we look at, go back to the settings here, also sharing you can do this way or through the settings. This anyone with a link is a very unlisted, anyone with a link is a very powerful option because then you can share with people outside of your college or have even within your college, not make people authenticate through the LMS, which is a little confusing sometimes. Or you can like invite people over here. So there's a lot of options. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Lesson 6, the editor is your friend. So let's look at that, all the things you can do with the editor. Again, here's my sample course, so I'm going to hit edit. We'll see, actually let's just play this for a moment before we do that. Just look at this, how it looks to the user. So you can see these are different contents you can jump to. So I put these different markers in. There are captions over here, so if I'm going to play, these will all go through. The captioning, there's captioning. You can add this discussion in if you want, notes that are personal notes or public notes. So there are a lot of options here. We'll talk about them again later. Those options can be very useful, but let's get rid of that and go back to the editor. So you often want to cut stuff at the beginning and the end, but you sometimes might want to cut stuff at the middle. So there's this cut right here, and you can just like cut out like any part that you want to cut out. You don't want to cut that out. And you can't cut the audio only. You have to cut the audio together with the content, but you can like just go within the content and cut the content only. So if, for example, there is an item where it's like you accidentally share some sensitive information, well, you did that during the presentation, but you can cut it out over here, but I don't want that cut. So then once you make your changes, you have to hit to apply them. You can edit any of these things here just by typing in, you know, a new name. I like that name. To start automatic captioning, you can use this automatic captioning, or you can upload for captions elsewhere. But this is with automatic captioning, and then I can go into each of these things and I can edit. So that's how you get the nice captions. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. So you can cut out beginning, the middle, the end, anything you want. Edit the captions, edit the contents. The table of contents is really nice. It's a good feature. If you're using PowerPoints, the name of the PowerPoint will show up and on the little clips on the bottom that we saw. So again, take advantage of the features, especially if you're flipping. We saw you have the contents, you have the captioning, you have the discussions, the notes, the bookmarks. Once again, this is the same example I showed earlier, but we'll just look at it again. You can just jump to any section. Again, this is what I mean. If you have a PowerPoint, it will put the title of each PowerPoint here automatically, but you can always go in and edit these. And again, with the captions over here. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Lesson 8, these videos are watched, not as often as you might expect, but they are watched. this is an example of the last 7 days of that one video I've been showing. Link your Zoom presentation to Moodle. We can look at the overall use of our system analytics right here. So this is not surprising, but really interesting. So starting in 1718, Panopto had this feature where you could have a separate folder for the year. They didn't before then. So you can see in 1718, the overall use was kind of relatively minimal. 1920, it went up a lot. That probably means the spring. This includes the spring. 2021, which is really just starting, like the semester hasn't even started yet, and already there's a huge amount of use here. So you can see, what are people watching? Well, the sample course number 1 is getting used a lot. This is the title of the different folders. Make sense of your Excel, of your data with Excel, which is a summer workshop. Online teaching practices, that's another summer workshop we're using. So you can see, Panopto is becoming really important during the quarantine. So it is useful to become friendly with the features and kind of know how to use the system, know what to avoid, and to, again, call tech support if you have problems. So that is it for my presentation, and thank you for watching.